Hello, and welcome to On the Roadmap, project manager's guide to getting ahead in your career. Each week, we interview a member of our community to get the distinct knowledge that we can to help you get ahead in your career. If you're like everybody else in this industry, you have no time for fluff, so we cut right through it and get down to the details. I'm your host, Mike Yaroshevsky, the founder and CEO of Visor. Visor is the most flexible, gorgeous way to do portfolio project management, and it syncs both ways with apps like Jira and Asana. For this week, we have an extra special guest. It's Theresa McFarlane. Theresa is the project management professional and Agile expert and the author of the Very Agile Project Management blog on LinkedIn. She's also the owner of Quantum Consulting. Let's get her on the roadmap. Welcome, Theresa.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited to get into what we're going to today. Typically, we go straight into it with the first question, which is what hot take, what unique perspective do you have about project management that few others recognize or understand?
That's a great question. I really feel that my hot take would be that project management and agile pretty much go hand in hand together, whilst they are separate.
Mhm.
There is a lot of collaboration in them, and I have seen that for some time. And I'm very pleased to see that Project Management Institute and Scrum Alliance and SAFE, there's starting to be some collaboration there,
Mhm.
and even with IIBA with business analysts. So a lot of organizations are realizing this is the way of working. So that's my hot take.
Awesome. All right, I like it. I think we're going to dive into that as we go. In fact, you know what? I'm going to reshuffle my question order and get right into the meaty question, which is many people have proclaimed the death of Agile, and I just think it's just such an interesting starting point, so that we could really think about Agile in a perspective of, well, why are people saying that? So, are we having a weekend at Bernie's moment where it's dead and we're just walking around pretending it's alive? I mean, in one case, you've got Dave Thomas, one of the original signers of the manifesto, who on March 4th, 2014, over a decade ago, declared the death. And, if you look at the manifesto, it came across as sort of like the left side and the right side, as he refers to it, preferring individuals and interactions over process and tools, uh, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. And so when I envision Agile today, I actually tend to see a lot more of the right side of that, process and planning and things that are against the Agile manifesto. So I understand where he's coming from, but clearly there's value here. And I think, somebody with your background is probably particularly able to kind of piece through it. So my question to you is, what do you think happened? Why are so many people declaring Agile dead? And what parts of capital A Agile do you think we need to keep?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I see it all the time, and I think it's agile is dead misnomer is about as viral as the Duolingo is dead on TikTok right now. And so I think some there's different categories of agilists out there, and I think some people are real purists who want to go
Mm,
verbatim by the word. And then I think there are some people who take the initial guidance and they make informed decisions and actions with that. I do think some of the reason why people consider there to be a demise of agile is because it's evolved. It's over 20 years old. If we kept on doing the same thing, right? And look at all the technology that's changed in 20 years, ways of working, AI, right? If we kept on doing the same thing, we'd be quite stagnant. And that's counterproductive to what agile is change and iterations. I do think agile got a bit corporate for a bit,
yeah.
and a lot of people made money off it, and a lot of money for that fact. And so I think a lot of consulting firms and individuals um, took advantage of that market and tried to milk contracts, and it's not popular thing to say, but it's a hot take. The role of
Hmm.
an agilist should be to fulfill the role and be able to roll off to self-sustaining, independent teams, and then work on the next one, right? If you're a scrum master, so on. So
What you're saying kind of reminds me of. I feel like there's almost like it connects to like religion in a way. Like it was like the priestly class of like we will teach you agile, but you need to keep coming to us all the time to get the knowledge. And I think that sort of like the sacred knowledge of agile that you have to pay us to get is maybe what you're describing. Am I getting it right?
yes, I mean, I have heard that term used in the industry. Like people are very religious about it and or preachy, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like to deal with those folks because there's less flexibility. And I think the flexibility is with the guidance and how you extrapolate that to meet your needs. Should it be people over process? You have to do what works for the teams because every team, whether it be software development or MarTech, content project management type of thing where
Yeah.
there's agile ways of working, every team is going to be different. They're going to be developing differently. You might have a globally dispersed team, you might have a localized team. So each team needs to be looked at independently. Their ways of working need to be looked at independently. And even the tooling, if you are going to use tooling, which everybody does now, right?
Yeah.
You need to ensure that the tools in the ecosystem work for you and your teams, especially now that many of us are remote, hybrid, or in office and global. We need to find ways to work asynchronously. So a lot has changed. So I don't believe it's dead. I just think it's evolved. I think as long as we stick to the core tenets, the principles, and the spirit in which it was brought about, I think you're good. I just think when you get too tool heavy and too rigid and you're not as flexible or you're doing a la carte and picking and choosing with things that don't make sense and you're doing something kind of like the Spotify model where you've got hierarchical models clashing with different ways of working, those things are going to be subject to failure. So you have to, at the end of the day, make some educated and informed decisions. And I also think another problem with the death of Agile was there were a lot of people going and getting certifications really quickly, and they would go to a 2 day training, and that was it. They were scrum masters. And the issue with that is whether you're doing safe or Scrum, whatever version, you scaled, what have you, the goal is to study, practice, get your certification, and maintain your certification. Continuous learning, continuous development, and improvement to grow in your practice. And that wasn't happening with a lot of people, and a lot of recruitment firms took advantage of that with lower paid workers, and they would get away with it and spread bad practice because their cost was lower than the more mid to senior level professionals who did keep up their practice. And as a PMO practice director and value management office director and practice lead, I saw a lot of that. I would interview over 200 people a year. And I'll tell you, the job market's really challenged out there, but for people who keep their skills up, they are in a much better place than those who
Mhm.
did not.
That's actually a good point. I wanted to ask you. The job market, definitely hearing specifically for folks in this role, has been really brutal lately. What do you make of that? How do we interpret this, and how do we respond to this?
I would interpret it with, as I previously stated, some of the challenges. Organizations, especially the larger corporate organizations, are focused on bottom lines, numbers. If they can get a developer in over a scrum master, they're going to go
Mhm.
for the developer to get more production out of that. And if they can save money on the scrum master, between the combination of not fully understanding the role of the scrum master or the product owner or any role within agile and just trying to basically save a dollar, or two here and there, and not really care about quality with the Scrum Master, which is a servant leader role. Um, they're going to perpetuate that bad practice, right? And so when you do that and you're not adding value because you're perpetuating bad practice, you make yourself disposable, right? Or if you're even trying to take advantage of the client by just continuing to keep your, you know, service agreements going with them, right?
Mhm.
You're
Mhm.
milking them, and eventually that's going to run dry for you, and people are going to not want to do agile. If you add too many initiatives around the tooling, people are not going
Yeah,
to want to do the data entry. That's an anti-agile process, right? And so th- that's going to have a big impact.
that makes a lot of sense to me. I hear you 100%. It's about, you know, the bottom line, and can we, can the companies get by without it? And then, you're right, all of this baggage that got attached through the years.
Yeah.
Um, hmm.
And it's also being 22 years old, over 20 years old,
Yeah,
right? People are expecting now that as young professionals graduate from college, that they're kind of doing this. They get discounts to do these certifications while they're in
yeah,
university. And so it's kind of expected that if you're in a developer or a program management role or whatever role you're going to be working on in tech or martech, that you already know agile ways of working going in. You're paying for your certifications. Companies aren't sponsoring or funding this anymore. This is all
hmm,
on you now. So
yeah,
that's been the major change and shift. And so therefore they're not hiring as many scrum masters because they're expecting the developers
to
to
do it
shore
themselves.
to brunt
Yeah,
that on their shoulders, which then you need to make a decision. Do you want to take away from development resource time for 10 hours per sprint for facilitating ceremonies per team?
yeah.
Or do you want them to do 10 hours of development?
It's a very expensive 10 hours.
It is a
Uh,
very expensive 10 hours. And then
yep,
you've got offshoring competing with the US market as well, which a lot of that is also occurring right now.
that makes sense. All right. So Agile is alive. It's getting rid of some of its baggage, and it's emerging, and kind of all of us to some extent are responsible. Um,
Mhm.
all right. My next question takes us into a little bit of the world of tooling. Like you said, everybody has to use tooling in some way or another, and that's a world that I think about. I am, very much in sort of the tech ecosystem, and almost sometimes a little too utopian about how technology can solve people problems. But at the end of the day, most of what this is really a people relationship business. And how do we get our tools and our people to work together? And one of the recent pieces you wrote about road mapping described something around the importance of using start dates and end dates. And it just seemed so darn practical how you were describing the importance of using tools in that way. You said something very specifically in there that almost felt like it could be a throwaway, but I really grabbed onto it, the idea of using filters to focus on specific teams or projects. And this is one of the things that I see is dramatically underutilized in tooling out there today, is just give everything and let them figure it out. And I just think that's just such a colossal mistake. So I wanted to pose it to you as somebody with, a ton of experience here. Why do filters matter within our tooling, and how can we be using them to a surprising effect?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Filters matter because we want to ensure that people get to the right information and quickly. It's nice to know that you have the resources there if you want to do something and tailor it yourself. But if somebody can automate a report, a custom filtered report, and send it to you, or even if there's AI in the tooling that can automate that reporting for you and send it to your stakeholders. When I act as an RTE, for example, and I am managing products and the overview of that product delivery, different people at different levels are going to want different information. Some may want to dig deeper as to why this is occurring, while others want the fast 5 minutes of how many things are on
Mhm.
track and what's off track. And then some people just are like, nope, just let me know what's off track and why, and we'll be done with it. What is it going to take to get it back on track? And so that's the quick and simple of it. Is our stakeholders are doing more with less right now, and so they have less time. So, as that famous saying goes, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
I
So
like
yeah, and when I was in college, I was an executive assistant, and I learned very quickly what the expectations were for executives, and down the pipeline.
let me guess, brevity. Focus on the facts. Yeah,
Indeed,
100%.
brevity, brevity,
So
brevity.
let's get practical on that. I guess talk me through what filters would you set up for various audiences? How do we use this tool to our advantage?
Ha ha ha. Well, it does depend on what tool you're using and what filters are available in that tool.
Yeah.
Um, if the tool has the filters and allows you to set up custom views, and you can give a link to that view, that's extremely helpful.
Hmm.
Sometimes there are challenges, and there's a need for bridge product projects. Yeah, I'm sorry, products for these projects, and it's not always fun extrapolating things into Excel still in 2025, is it? When we know AI could do it, or the company doesn't have
Right.
the budget to buy the add-on, or so on. So having the availability to do those custom filters is great, but then when you have to go and do manual filters, or even a combination of manual and then using AI to
Mhm.
massage or output that information in the manner it needs to be, and then you have to take that data and then put it back into Confluence to give to people. Right, I'm using Confluence for example, right? Because we were talking about Atlassian. Um, you know, there's different ways to deliver information, and the more information and filtering available in the tooling, the better. If there's automation, AI automation in the tooling and reporting, incredible.
Cool. Yeah. Well, let's talk about AI. I think it's just such an interesting, uh, just I don't even want to say development. It's developing. It's not done. It's happening right now. We're in the middle of it, and I think that we've seen some early innings, but we still have a lot yet to go of how we'll see this impact our industry. So I wanted to ask you, from the vantage point you have, where are you seeing actual results from AI that exceed the cost of establishing it and managing it? Because I'm getting some fairly conflicting perspective. Some folks saying, "Hey, seems like it had a lot of promise, but we just couldn't get it to deliver." Some folks seem to be getting value. So I wanted to hear your take.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm very passionate about AI as much as I am cybersecurity, which leads me into saying a lot of companies are still concerned about the security around different AI tools right now.
Mm,
And not only the security around the tools, but how individuals are using them and how the data is stored and accessed. So a lot of companies are very hesitant. Well, other companies are adopting it, and then some employees might be posing potential cybersecurity risks by saying, I'm not going to wait for corporate to get on board in their security initiatives. I'm going to go over here and go to Bard, or whatever tool out there, and massage the information I need, copy and paste it, and get the information I need, and do this. I think some examples for PM and Agile professionals where I see a lot of value, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So I would definitely say meeting notes, right?
mm,
You are a
yes.
PM. or any role in the agile profession, you have to take notes. Sometimes you have to do things as takeaways, and things can get very technical, right? And maybe the not all scrum masters or agile professionals or project management professionals have a high technical acumen, right? They haven't been techies in a prior life like I was or something. So they may not understand everything around that.
Mhm.
Having AI or various AI tools for meeting minutes and the ability to make a quick synopsis within 15 minutes of the meeting ending is phenomenal. I love the fact that in Teams, for instance, um, you can do the video, you can have the AI, the meeting minute notes, and you can do the manual notes. There's lots of things you can do there, as well as with other, platforms like that. Um, there's lots of really good tools on the market that take much better notes as well, and also segment the notes automatically for you. They parse them, organize them into actionable results and takeaways. That saves somebody like myself even more time, and then I'm able to focus on the collaboration in the work versus doing all the administrative stuff. So that,
Yes.
to me, saves loads of time, right?
I think that makes so much sense because we talk about, when is the AI going to go from, is it enabling us to do our work to doing our work for us? And I think one of the biggest risks is when it moves into the doing the work for us. There's so much that I just don't think is possible to automate because it's relationship based. But what your
It
perspective on this is it's do the things that aren't relationship based. It's the grunt work that nobody really wants to do, taking those meeting minutes.
Indeed, so much of what we do as project management, agile, and BA professionals is psychological, determining
Yeah.
psychological safety and approaches for dealing with each individual. That's why we need to take a holistic approach versus a standardized approach, because what one development team or developer may be doing might be doing it differently. And it's also important to think about the reasons and motivations why things are done a certain way. And AI can't extrapolate that. It can create loads of scenarios and stuff and go by the book. But again, as somebody who has multiple certifications in AI myself, I'm going to tell you AI is only good as the data you train it to. And it will make some suggestions, but again, it's all about the data you train it to and the purpose and reasoning for why. To if you want to look up something, you can create an AI bot to double check, have a sanity check about PM and agile methodologies, frameworks, right? But in
Makes
terms
sense.
of all the people stuff, I see it being as a tool, as an add-on for efficiency, but not a replacement.
I like that. All right. Well, we are approaching the end of the show, but I wanted to ask you one final question to sort of give it to the next guest, which is what question do you want other PMs on the show to answer?
What question do I want other PMs on the show to answer? I I think I would really like to know how other PMs are addressing the budget restraint challenges right now, where they could be doing so much more better quality work amongst teams if the organizations would invest more in tooling, in functional tooling, not just um, antiquated tools that every PM and agile professional does not like to use. And I don't want to say names because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But there's some really good tools that are prevalent on the market that you've mentioned at the
Yeah.
call, including yours. And you know, how are they navigating around those challenges with the budget constraints whilst trying to collaborate across large organizations and teams? I'd love
I
to know
like
how
that.
they're dealing with those challenges.
That's a good question. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple episodes with an answer to that.
Excellent.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today, but I really wanted to thank Teresa for joining us. Thank you so much for a thoughtful conversation. I wanted
Thank you,
to
Mike.
thank the Visor team for sponsoring this, putting this together, producing it. I just show up and get to look handsome and ask some good questions, but there's a lot of effort that goes behind this, and I really appreciate the effort for that. And I wanted to thank the viewers, not just for tuning in, but for investing in yourself. It makes a world of difference to take time out of your very busy schedule to learn from others and grow. So, pat on the back for joining us today. And until next time, I will see you on the roadmap.